Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers and hope you're enjoying this weekend. Later, home buying trends in the Bluegrass region. We'll talk with folks from Kentucky Realtors a little later about how the economy is impacting sales and the ongoing push for affordable housing options. But first, Kentucky's Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman is here. In her first political office, it's been the term nobody expected, from COVID and shutdowns to deadly tornadoes to major jobs announcements. A wild rides of ups and downs for the Coleman administration. Now the governor is running for re-election. Most assume Coleman will again be his running mate, although candidates don't have to make that decision now until after the primary. She says she is. Lieutenant Governor Coleman was an educator and successful coach before becoming Beshear's running mate in 2019. Lieutenant Governor Coleman has traveled the state extensively during her term, joining us today for Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Unfortunately, it comes on the occasion of this week, us learning about this horrible school shooting out in Texas. And you're a former teacher. You spent a lot of time on those school campuses. What are your thoughts, first of all, about the tragedy?
Just on a personal note, I am devastated. I am angry. And I think so many Kentuckians and Americans share those feelings. Yes, I was a teacher. I think about those two teachers that literally sacrificed their lives to save what they could of their students' lives in that classroom. And they have kids at home. And somebody's going to have to explain to those kids what their mothers did, and that they were heroes in this and should have never had to be. I think about the parents around the United States this morning, just like me, that dropped their kid off at preschool or at school, and it felt different. It felt different. Kissing Evelyn goodbye this morning was not like it was yesterday morning. And I know so many families feel that. And I think about the absolute need to be able to have a society where our kids can go to school and be safe. We have to figure out how to make sure that that's possible, and that becomes a reality for not just our community, but this entire Commonwealth and this country.
If you could turn that anger that you described and the emotion that you obviously feel about this situation into action, what would it be?
Well, I can give you an example of what we've tried to do. I think it was a couple sessions ago, Senator McGarvey proposed a piece of legislation about red flag laws. That is an overwhelmingly popular thing when it comes to fighting violence like this. And it didn't move. It didn't go anywhere. And that is frustrating, but I do think that every time something like this happens, we have to look internally and say, what are we willing to do? What are we willing to deal with?
Some say more security is needed at schools. There was a bill this year that requires that, resource officers, but did not fund the local school districts' positions for that. Is that the answer, more security?
Well, first of all, there's no single answer, unfortunately. This is a very multi-layered, multifaceted issue. And if it weren't, we would have figured it out by now. But what I will say, and again, this frustration and anger from a teacher's perspective and an educator's perspective is it's another unfunded mandate, another requirement on schools that they are expecting you to do X, Y, and Z, and there's no funding attached to be able to make it possible. And so again, we have to be willing to ask ourselves, what are we willing to do to protect our kids?
Well, we talked about the ups and downs of your tenure as Lieutenant Governor. We are about to hit the 6-month point since those deadly tornadoes out in western Kentucky. Many are still homeless. Slowly, they're rebuilding things out there. Has the state done all it can to support those who survived the storms and those who suffered tremendous loss?
Well, let me say this. I was in Bremen. Within 24 hours after the tornado passed through that community. And we hear a lot about Dawson Springs and Mayfield, and rightfully so, because those communities were devastated. But when I went through and I surveyed the damage in Bremen, I went to the elementary school, and the gym was wall to wall, packed with supplies. I mean, tables upon tables of resources that were there for those families. Now, it had only been 24 hours, so there wasn't enough time for resources to come from across the state or across the country like they eventually would. Those were neighbors helping neighbors. Those were people in our communities who were spared and knew that their neighbors were suffering and did what they could to help. And I have to tell you that when I saw the communities that were damaged, you have to see it to believe it, and even then, you can't really explain it. You can't put it into words. But what I saw hour after hour, day after day, was Kentuckians stepping up to help each other. What I saw was an administration and locally elected officials and the state legislature coming together, not asking each other, what's your political party? Are you conservative or liberal? But how can we help move these people forward? How can we help rebuild the lives of these families that have been devastated? And to me, that's the best of us, right? It shouldn't have to take something like that to happen to bring us together like that. But since then, we have worked tirelessly with local officials, partnering with the mayors and judge executives out there to basically allocate temporary housing to get families on their feet, to help provide for them as they rebuild. The governor just visited and did some Homes for Hope out there, and it's the beginning of a very long process.
There's been some frustration that has been expressed by some that they know that tens of millions of dollars was raised for this Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund, and that money has not all been, in fact, most of it has not been allocated at this point, right?
So with the Western Kentucky Relief Fund, those dollars were raised in order to be able to help supplement all of the other resources that would be coming in from whether it's the federal government with FEMA or state resources that we may have. And so as we go through deploying these processes, cleaning up an entire town that has been completely demolished is not easy, and it takes time. Rebuilding homes, entire neighborhoods, takes time. And so we diligently work to raise those funds and to help get resources out to those communities as quickly as we could, and we'll continue to do that.
After a legislative session in which Republican leadership led the legislature to override virtually every veto the governor came with, in your view, there was a lot of money that was allocated. There are lots of raises that have been given. Was this a session that you celebrate, or were there things that you're more concerned about, or both?
Maybe both. I will say this: we ended up with the best budget that we've had in as long as any of us can remember, but we fell short. We could have done better. You can say it's the highest funding, for example, for public education, but it could have been better, and it should have been better. When we are at a situation now in Kentucky where we have seen unprecedented investment in economic development. We are creating tens of thousands of jobs already in this administration. And so that boom and that movement is there. If we want to build an economy of the future, and I think we do, it starts in our classrooms. And so we have to make sure that with our budget, we are investing in our kids, in our future, and in our economy.
Most state employees got significant raises, but the legislature made it a local decision for teachers and educators. And now some are getting significant bumps. Mercer County is an example of that at 10%. Some districts are going much lower, 2%, 1%, I think, in one county. As a former teacher, would you have wanted to see uniform raises mandated by the legislature and funded by the legislature?
Well, let me say this. The 8% raise that state employees got was absolutely deserved and long overdue. Same with law enforcement, same with our social workers. That absolutely, we have to protect our public workers and make sure that we are providing them with a wage that will continue to build upon those professions. As for teachers, the governor included a significant raise for teachers in the budget. It was taken out. And when the legislature says that the Republican leaders in the legislature say they left it up to local decisions, they didn't. They took the raise out of the budget, and most schools cannot meet the threshold to be able to provide those raises because of all of the services that those funds go to provide for anyway. Now, If you want to give people raises, give them raises, right? That's what I say. But there's a reason that teachers were expected to advocate for raises, and yet no other profession had to.
Are you disappointed that the Democrats didn't recruit enough candidates to run this fall to make any kind of dent in the Republican supermajorities in both chambers?
Well, you know, when it comes to running for office, it is certainly not for everybody. And so I look forward to making sure that we continue to lift up our local leaders, that we continue to find folks who are doing the right thing, who are living a life of service, and convince them that public service is worth it. But quite frankly, right now with this climate the way that it is, you know, I understand why people are hesitant to put their name on the line, but I will say this, it's hard, but it's always worth it, and we need more good people, more everyday Kentuckians that are working in normal jobs, that understand what it's like at the kitchen table to be making decisions for Kentuckians.
You anticipate you will be Governor Beshear's running mate next year?
Yes, I do.
And you're operating right now as though that is the case?
Yes.
You know, Governor Beshear clearly wants to run for re-election on the economy and low unemployment and these major jobs announcements that you referred to. Can he steer Kentuckians' attention, though, away from other issues that will be brought up by, you know, those running against him? The COVID policies that some thought was an overreach, some of the social issues that have come up in the legislature that he vetoed that seem to have popularity in Kentucky.
Well, so I will say this. We were fortunate to have Governor Beshear during a once-in-a-century pandemic. I keep telling him it better be once-in-a-century pandemic, because he is a leader who treated every single Kentucky family like it was his own. And when you put politics aside, when you're willing to listen to experts and make the best decision you can with the information you have, and do it because you know it's the right thing, that's what leadership is. And so he will tell you he had to make some hard decisions along the way, and we didn't have a playbook for this. And as I travel the state now, what I hear is people saying, listen, it's been a hard couple years, but if it wasn't for Governor Beshear, we don't know where we'd be right now. And so as we put the pandemic in the rearview mirror, hopefully, what I do think we're seeing is Kentuckians being grateful for leadership in some of the toughest times, especially now that we have the economy that we have moving forward.
You have been a proponent of women being in leadership positions, and yet it's been nearly 40 years since the state's only female governor was elected, Martha Lane Collins. There's never been a Kentucky U.S. Senator, female from Kentucky, and a lot of women are leaving the state legislature this year. Do you think women are making strides or falling behind in the Commonwealth?
Well, it has been a very long time since Kentucky's had a governor, a female governor. I can remember when Martha Lane Collins was governor, I was a little girl. And I always say that she's the only female governor Kentucky's had so far. But I will say the females that left the legislature this year was by design from the way that the districts were redrawn by the Republican majority. They pitted Democratic women against each other. Primarily the women that had the guts to stand up and share their voice about issues that they believed in, they were punished for that. And that's unfortunate because we want to make sure that voices are heard in the minority as well as in the majority on the House and Senate floors. But I will say this, as I look around at young women, college women, girls in high school, I have never felt more hopeful. I've gotten to work with the Student Advisory Council for the Department of Education. We worked on a lot of student mental health initiatives, and these students, in particular these high school girls, they are as bright as can be. And so I know that it's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort, but it's going to take people like that to turn around this political atmosphere.
Lieutenant Governor Coleman, thanks for coming by. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be back in just a moment, and we'll be talking to Kentucky Realtors about housing, the market. It seems to be changing pretty quickly here as far as demand. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. We're glad to have you with us. We hear a lot these days about home buying trends. The market has been hot in Kentucky the last couple of years with rapidly rising demand and prices. With interest rates jumping, will that cool the market? Kentucky Realtors are celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. Mike Inman of Mercer County is serving as president during this special year. He's joining me today to talk about the place we call home, our homes, and we'll do that. It's good to see you. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad to be here.
Mike, also, Kentucky is our home, and we had such a rough situation about 6 months ago with those tornadoes in western Kentucky. Realtors connected nationally, got involved, and you're able to help considerably with that effort.
Yes, we are. A historic effort. This happened on December the 10th. I was installed as the president just that week, just a few days before it. So it's been a number one item for me. We immediately sprung into action, went to the Realtors Relief Foundation of the National Association of Realtors and asked for a grant. We were awarded $1.5 million to help pay for temporary lodging allowances for people who are impacted by the tornado. And because we have realtors in virtually every community in Kentucky, we were able to reach down to those communities and find the people who are most impacted by the tornadoes and have them assist with getting the applications in the hands of people to apply, get those applications into us. We've received over 600 applications at this point and have approved in the 530 range of them been approved. And we're at $550,000 now that we have awarded as in grants, between $400,000 and $3,000 per impacted household.
There was just, you see it, and there was that desire to help on the part of your realtors.
Absolutely. We realtors help everybody. Home ownership and property rights are fundamental to what we are as realtors. And when someone's homes are impacted, we have gone in and gotten grants before for floods and things. Nothing on the magnitude of what this is. But our realtor family sprung together to help the communities that they live and work in.
We've been talking about a red hot housing market for a couple of years now, and are you seeing indications that that is likely to continue, or are there factors at play that may slow things down?
Well, Bill, we've had an unsustainable period of growth for the last several years. And we've, in fact, been in a growth period for over a decade now. And so in the last few months, there's been a big change. I would say a shock to the market that has come about because of more than doubling in the price of gasoline, more than doubling the mortgage rate, although there has been in the last couple of weeks a little bit of a decline in the mortgage rate. But the rates jumped from down around 3% to about 5.5%. That's a big shock. If you take a person who let's say someone is spending $200,000 on a home, that represents about $300 difference in buying power each month. So that's a big impact. The other thing that's impacting us is there's a shortage of building materials. We have homes that are under construction that are waiting for things like appliances or electrical faucets. Remodeling my own bathroom in my house, and we're waiting right now for faucets to come in, believe it or not. Been waiting for over a month. So there's a shortage of materials. There's also a shortage of labor, and labor costs are going up. And so all of these things have hit us. On the other side of that is that we have a shortage of housing, a very real shortage. We went a decade without building enough houses. Same number of people graduating from high school, same number of people entering the workforce, graduating from college. And the demand for housing is there, but we haven't met it.
I've seen numbers that were maybe 4 million units short nationwide.
Nationwide, yes, that's about right. In Kentucky, we're probably 15,000 short.
With the higher interest rates, how do you help people manage their expectations? Because as you said, there is less buying power now. The house they may have had their eye on a year ago would be more expensive now because of the interest rates.
Yes, we had about an 18% growth in the median home price year over year. Now, we don't really expect to see those prices go down, but we do not see that growth continuing. We're going to level off a little bit here. That's good news for buyers. Most of the last 2 years, if you tried to put in an offer, you had to compete with as many as 20 or 25 other offers, sometimes way more than that, and you were way above the list price. But what's going to happen now is it's going to take a little bit longer to sell the houses, so buyers have more of an opportunity to get ready and get into the process of bidding. We think that's going to help them a lot. Sellers are going to have to dampen their expectations a little bit because they've gotten used to this, putting a house on the market and then selling it for more than it was listed for.
Is it more important than ever that people do their financial consultation than before they move forward, so that they don't get disappointed when they get out there and start looking?
Absolutely. That has been critical for the last several years, and it continues to be critical. There are two people that you need to talk to before you get started in the home buying process. Number one is consult a realtor. Number two is consult a loan officer. You need to know what your ability is to buy, because there's no point in going looking at houses as fast as they're flying off the market that you don't have any ability to purchase.
Are you seeing any trend out there that is coming on, or something that's fading in terms of the types of homes that people are interested in?
Well, it is interesting. COVID made a lot of changes.
Right.
I sell in a very rural area, and we have benefited from the fact that a lot of people want to be out away from the cities.
And can, because they can work remotely in some cases,
absolutely
right?
right.
Yeah.
The broadband growth in Kentucky has been phenomenal, and it's amazing. Now you can get broadband in some form or another just about anywhere, and we're having people come in from out of state who are actually bringing their jobs with them and buying a rural property and continuing to work from home. So that kind of changes the dynamic. Broadband is important. A space in the home where you can have a home office is very important. So you're seeing people either ask for a different bedroom, an additional bedroom, or some space in the home that they can use. And keep in mind that we've had children staying home doing virtual learning, so there's actually competition for that space in the homes. But those are big dynamics. The other thing is that I used to say that swimming pools didn't make a lot of difference in the sale of a home, but beginning with COVID, they've made a big difference. So outdoor kind of activity space around a home is very important to
Do they
people
help
now.
with the price now?
An in-ground home, an in-ground pool will actually add to the value of the home now, especially when you're in the summer months.
How big is the flip market these days, where investors buy a property and improve it and try to sell it for a profit?
The challenge with flipping homes, I've done some of that myself, the challenge with flipping homes now is finding properties at a price that you can afford to go in, because the cost of actually doing the flip is more now because of the rise in the cost of building materials and inflation and labor costs. So the way you make money on flipping a property is what you pay for it. You have to get the property worthwhile, because it's going to cost you a fixed amount of money to fix it, and you're going to get what you get for it when you put it on the market. So it is a challenge for flippers now to find the properties.
Well, with the change in the economy as well, and with the materials, would probably make it more challenging than it was, say, a year ago, right?
Yeah, even our home builders today are struggling, because when you start building a house, you don't know what it's going to cost in the end because of this problem with rising costs and the shortage of building materials. If you have to sit on the market waiting 90 days for a supply chain problem, you're paying interest on the loan to where you're financing that home. So that's a very real cost to a builder.
For buyers or sellers, why do you recommend that people go with a real estate professional as opposed to trying to navigate the housing terrain on their own?
Well, first of all, buying a home is a very complex thing, and it's one of the largest purchases that anybody will ever make. So the reason you consult a professional is because they know what's going on in the market. They read market trends, they meet with other realtors, they consult with each other, they go to classes and actually get trained on this. So a realtor can sit down with you and give you a market analysis of a home and tell you what that home is worth. And we know that some homes have been selling higher than realtors have said they are worth. That's where you get this over market value. That's because people have an anxiety about getting a home, and maybe there's just such a shortage they get them. But the realtor is going to advise you what to pay for that home so that you're not upside down in it at the start.
And do you think that there will continue to be a tremendous demand for local realtors who know a market, as opposed to, a lot of this can be done on websites, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can buy a lot of things on a website, but the major purchase that you're going to make in your life, you should not make off of a website.
What kind of profession is this? You were a late comer to real estate, you were telling me, right?
I was. I've had a very diverse career. I was in the Army, and then for a while I was in the information technology world, and I accidentally got into real estate because of a family situation. But it's very different. Real estate is not really about houses and so forth. It's about people. It's about solving the biggest problem that people have, whether how to sell or purchase a home.
There's some drama sometimes, right?
There is a lot of drama.
and the real estate professional tries to keep that off the buyers and sellers, I guess.
Keep that out of the way. We are the neutral party that's the go-between, hopefully with another realtor, and we negotiate and we keep the emotion out of it, out of what is actually a very emotional experience. But the idea is to minimize the drama. What
are your goals for the Kentucky Realtors as the organization begins its second 100 years during the time that you're president?
Yes. It's very exciting to be the president of the 12,800 member Kentucky Realtors. We started out with some goals. Some of those have changed. The tornado situation we talked about earlier certainly changed my focus a lot this year. We also lost our chief executive officer, so we are in the process of hiring a new chief executive officer. And then the standard things that we deal with, our profession has expanded greatly, so we have a lot of new realtors in the field. So professionalism is very important to us. The quality of education that we're able to provide to our members, and then of course our advocacy program with working with the state legislature. Some really big wins this year, and some big challenges ahead of us as the state looks at their tax laws, and we're looking at the impact that has on home purchases and home ownership.
Any agenda for next year for the legislature, or you let things play out?
I would say it's too early for us to say what our agenda will be next year. We're still sorting out the results of the primaries.
I think everybody is.
Yes.
Mike Inman, we thank you for coming in from Kentucky Realtors. Appreciate it very much. Thanks for your service to the country, by the way, on this Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir. And that is Kentucky Newsmakers. We want to thank you very much for joining us. Certainly hope that you continue to have a very safe Memorial Day weekend. Join WKYT for the latest news, and you make it a good week ahead.